Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Move with the Caravan football preview with Jim Powers. I'm Chris Miller. I'm here with Jim Powers. Jim, how are we doing today?
Doing great and recuperating from a fantastic weekend of not only watching great, football online, but being down at Cape Girardeau. I mean, the weekend that our area had, I don't think we've ever come close to it. Three state champions in volleyball and three team championships across country, plus a bunch of kids winning individual medals. I can't remember the last time the metro area has seen that type of a weekend when it comes to state championships. And to watch Jefferson R7 and what they did this past weekend, Tara Fish has just done a terrific job. And, they kind of got that demon, put away when they beat Herman in that final on Saturday. It was just amazing. It was a great turnout by the R7 community. And, I had a blast calling the match. It was so much fun that, be a part and to call that match. And especially, it's hard to believe, but it's their very first state title as a school.
Yeah.
And that, so, it was a lot of fun, but congratulations to Tara, her crew, and, what a great way to wrap up the volleyball season for Jefferson County.
Especially with all those seniors and getting there last year and just getting a taste of it. And from when we called their game with St. Pius this year, you could just tell, like, oh my gosh, these kids are really, really, really good. And that was, to me, that was an epic battle in itself. I can only wish that, we St. Pius had the opportunity to do that, but they had to play a very tough opponent, obviously. And but no, great for those kids from R7. They deserve it. Coach Fish, she deserves it. I mean, it's great. And Herman is no slouch when it comes to volleyball. They've got a fantastic program going on over there.
I mean, you've got to remember they dropped the first set, and then they were down in the second set, 22-15,
That's quite a
and then
rally.
scored the next 10 out of 11 points to win the second. And I knew at that point you just felt the whole thing flip over, and it was the sets 3 and 4 were extremely tough. But you know what? When you got Breyer, when you've got Lloyd, you've got Roth. I mean, Siebert. I mean, those kids carried that team across the finish line, and it was just so cool to see. But yeah, being down, 22-15, I believe it was, and then you rally back and score the next 10 points out of 11 to win the second set. That set it all up right there, and it was awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great for them, great for the school. I know we're rivals, but at the same time, a lot of our kids either used to go to school there or know a lot of the kids or related to them. And it's awesome to see that, especially in our area. And you mentioned the other teams as well with cross country and stuff. So it's just been a great fall sports season for all of our teams in the area. And speaking of the one that we normally cover on the show, we'll go ahead and jump right into that one.
Yeah, let's get into
Yeah,
football a little
yeah,
bit now.
football. I think it's a football preview, but you know what? Hey, it's
Yeah,
great. We're talking about the kids and the program, so
that's right.
that's all that matters. But we're gonna jump to Class 3 District 2, where we have a finals matchup of number one Cardinal Ritter and number two University City. Cardinal Ritter in the semifinals beat Roosevelt 64-0, and U City narrowly escaped an upset bid from number three Herculaneum as they won 20-14. So, Jim, what do you think about this finals matchup?
Once again, and I hate to say it, no disrespect to what Derek Colquitt's done over at U City. He's done a terrific job this year in taking that program over. Herky played there was a couple things early that went wrong for the Black Cats, and they weren't able to recover. But, once again, a great season for, Herky in getting to that point. But Ritter is just doing what Ritter does right now, and that's just steamrolling people. And I hate to say it, that's what we're going to see Friday night out of this one. Ritter, they have one goal right now. It's not a district, it's not a conference. It's we want the state title. We want a shot in Columbia the first weekend of December to win the state championship. And they're on a mission right now, and I just don't see anybody right now that could stop them. But I know we're going to talk about the top part of that bracket here in a minute. I think we're setting up to see a pretty doggone good game in the quarterfinal next week.
Yeah, and we don't have the graphic, and it's not really one that we've talked about, but the Class 3 District 1 district championship between Valley Catholic and Park Hill Central, that's going to be very interesting. And the only thing that could get in the way of Ritter to be a speed bump is if they are definitely overlooking and don't even take the game seriously against University City. I don't see that happening based on how they've played. But that's the one that you're kind of, if you're a Ritter fan, you're kind of scoreboard watching to see who you're going to end up getting. But I think that's going to be a pretty good matchup as well.
Yeah, Valley. I mean, these two teams played earlier this year in the same conference now, and a lot of people had this circled. They by far are the two best teams in that district, and Valley gets to host this time around as the number one seed. It's going to be a great matchup. Valley got pushed to the edge of the cliff the first time that they played and was able to pull it out in the fourth quarter. I know Valley wants the shot. They want the chance. They did it last year, the first year in Class 3, and St. Mary's beat them up pretty good. I think they're remembering that, and they want a shot at the number one team this year in Class 3 in Cardinal Ritter. So, great matchup with Valley and with Park Hill Central. And then, yeah, if you're Ritter, you can't be looking ahead. You got to take care of what's in front of you because, unfortunately, I think we saw a couple teams this past weekend that were looking ahead a little bit and got caught in that trap game, so to say. And, we're going to get into that with a few of those here in a few moments.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and slide over there because the trap game is something that everybody needs to be if you're a good team, you need to be mindful of that, especially now as we're moving into the district finals and then winning and playing in the quarterfinals for the state championship. And I think that's kind of what happened to one of our teams here that we're going to talk about, Class 4 District 1. The finals is set. We have number 1 Hillsboro taking on number 3 Festus. Hillsboro defeated Farmington 57-0 in their semifinal matchup, while Festus, being the 3 seed, upset number 2 North County 28-15. And we talked about it last week that we foresaw a Hillsboro North County rematch. Not quite the case because Festus had something to say about that.
Yeah, and we talked about that. This Festus team has been playing some really, really good football over the last couple of weeks, and especially the back part of the season heading into the playoffs. And, we said that this is a game where North County better be ready to go because if they don't, Festus can come up and get them. Well, guess what? Festus did everything they needed to do. They played some great defense. They slowed down North County in that rushing attack. They controlled the line of scrimmage. And, Coach Afadale had an unbelievable game plan set for that game. And they're going to have to do it again because now you got Hillsboro. You're going to the home of the Hawks. And we saw what happened the first time these guys hooked up earlier this season. And, I'm sure there's going to be a few different wrinkles and a few different tricks. But once again, that was those true 3 matchups sometimes can be that trap game, in the districts. And we saw it right there. I think North County got caught looking a little bit ahead because they wanted to avenge the earlier loss this year to Hillsboro. And they kind of forgot that Festus is a pretty good ball club. And there's somebody that you need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and going from the way Festus was playing defense earlier in the season and the points they were giving up, they've been doing a fantastic job on that side of the ball here lately as the season wound down and then moving into the district tournament. So this, if you're Hillsboro, you're not trying to look ahead to see who's coming out of the St. Mary's district, but at the same time, it's that could shape up. This could be shape up to actually be a lot better game than what people think.
Well, number one, I would not be looking towards that St. Mary's game because that is going to be a great game, and I know we're going to talk about that here in a second. But yeah, you're exactly right. You need to concentrate on that district championship. You need to concentrate on what Festus is going to do to you. Their defense has really cleaned a lot of stuff up. There was the first 3 games where Festus gave up over 300 yards a game. I don't see Festus doing that right now. The big, big key is Austin Romaine going to be able to go on the offensive side of the ball. You haven't needed him. You had the bye week last week. I'm really curious to see if he's going to be able to go offensively just to add that second, dynamic into that rushing attack for Hillsboro. But once again, if you're the Hawks, you got to control up front. You got to control the things that you can control and take care of your business in front of a raucous home crowd because it is just going to be packed over at Hillsboro on Friday night.
It's not that far of a drive between Festus and Hillsboro, so
7
I would say,
miles.
Yeah, I'm going to say that it's going to be standing room only, and it might even be a fire code safety issue at some point. And speaking of that next district that both teams will be looking ahead to, we have Class 4 District 2, and the finals matchup is set there. In the semifinals, St. Mary's defeated Gateway 69-6. to advance to the finals, while number 2 Rockwood Summit defeated number 3 Union 59-26 in a battle of state ranked teams. So now we have a 1-2 matchup between St. Mary's and Rockwood Summit. And, what do you think about this one, Jim? Because I know everybody's looking at St. Mary's, but Rockwood's put together a fine season themselves.
I am tired of hearing people say that Rockwood Summit does not deserve the accolades that they're getting. What they did to Union from start to finish should expel any of that stuff, because they took it to a really, really good Union team, from the word go. I mean, this game wasn't even close. In the defensive side, they dialed some stuff up. And, Eric Stewart and those guys, they know that they're going to have to, play the near perfect game this week. But, once again, you got some wrinkles that you haven't seen all year that could get thrown out, thrown into the wind this coming week in South City. But my gosh, Summit, once again, I go back to what I've said. They don't get the credit they deserve. They've lost 2 games in the last 2 years. Jackson, Marquette. Jackson in the quarter last year, Marquette earlier this year. Marquette's playing CBC in Class 6 in the state semifinal, in the district final, which is the state quarterfinal. I mean, come on, you got to show this team some love. I'm finally glad they're getting it in the state poll. But if there's a coach of the year in the metro area with the amount of kids that Summit lost, Eric Stewart absolutely should get it, because they had, when you lose a kid like Drew Crobath, you lose a couple of those big linemen up front. You're rebuilding some stuff, and you're running a bunch of young kids out there that are excited. And just to see how they've grown all year, the Summit's going to give St. Mary's everything that they want. And St. Mary's is really talented. We've talked about them all year long. I mean, they do so many great things. Now it's going to be, the key is up front, can St. Mary's handle what is going to be dialed up on defense by the Falcons? So this is going to be an interesting matchup. I don't think it's going to be a blowout that a lot of people think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people expect.
Yeah, and I agree as well, because everybody's kind of overlooked Summit, and they've done I can't even put it into words how well of a job they've done. You're right. Two losses in the last 2 years, replacing as many kids as they have. The credit goes to them slowing down that high-powered Union offense that we talked about, that was very dangerous coming in, and we're gonna see if Summit's got the defensive ability to stop. Sure enough, they did. So I think this is going to shape up to be one of the better matchups that we covered.
5 sacks. I mean, right out of the gate, first possession, they dialed it up right from the get-go. They ended up, I believe, with 5 sacks, a couple fumble recoveries, an interception. I mean, you cannot look past them. If you're St. Mary's, you can't be looking to that top side of the bracket. You've got a big enough challenge sitting in front of you that you've got to take care of Friday night in South City.
Yeah, 100% agree. So let's talk about the next one, our Class 5 District 3 matchup. We have a final set between number 1 Francis Howell and number 3 Fort Zumwalt North. In the semis, Francis Howell defeated Howell North 56-12, while number 3 Fort Zumwalt North defeated rival Fort Zumwalt West 45-28. So another 3 upsets the 2 matchup here, but Francis Howell's pretty good, Jim.
They're good. They're getting a little bit of a reprieve because, Zumwalt North knocks off the number 2 seed last week. It's not that big of an upset, a 2-3. That was a really evenly matched 2-3 matchup between Zumi West and North. But yeah, I mean, Hal took care of North early this season. I really don't expect anything less. I think it'll be a little bit closer because I think North is playing a little bit better at this stage of the ball game, but instead of earlier this year. Because once again, Joe Bacon had a ton of young kids out there to start the season off that have grown up throughout the season. But my gosh, Adam Shipley, he's turning into be one of the top quarterbacks in the state of Missouri. When you got Brett Norfleet that you can get the ball to. Then you got the back end of that defense on the secondary side that just does terrific things. Hal is going to be awfully, awfully tough to beat. But, it doesn't get easy. Class 5 does not get easy, and we saw it on the bottom part of that bracket to where for the first time in 10 years, Webb City not playing for a district championship this
It's
week.
crazy.
Republic gets them. And it's not now you got to remember Republic is the only team that beat Nixa in the
Yeah.
regular season. This Republic team is going to be no slouch. And then you got Camdenton and Lebanon round two in that rivalry to see who's going to move on. And then you've got a Timberland team that decided we're going to play some defense this week.
We hadn't seen that.
We hadn't seen that. Well, guess what? They handed Holt their first shutout of the season in that district final, and they're going to have to now go out to Helias. I'm telling you, I've said it every week. I'm going to say it again. You win Class 5, you are the best team in the state of Missouri, hands down, bar none.
Yeah, and I think you've been kind of adamant about that too, Jim.
I'm not stepping away from it, and I honestly believe that when you look at how Class 5 set up this year, you look over on the other side of the bracket, which we will hear in a minute. There's just so many great teams,
Yeah.
and there's just so many different teams that you could put them all in a hat right now, pick one out, and that's who's going to be your state champion. I don't think you can say that about some of the other classifications. I think there's a lot of separation there, but there's no separation in 5. Everybody is super talented. Everybody is doing the things that they need to do at this stage of the game to win and advance.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and jump into that district that you already alluded to, which would be Class 5 District 4, where, as you said, the number one team in that district, Holt, lost to Timberland 21-0, and Helias Catholic defeated number 6 Battle and took away that Cinderella slipper and beat them 45-14. So Timberland going to Helias, that's a pretty tough order there for Timberland. Do you think they can pull it off?
Well, you know what? I really do. I mean, once again, you look at their schedule. You look who they played. They played the House of the World. They played the Holts of the World twice. They played Troy. I mean, they play a brutal schedule. So don't discount what they did against Holt, and that's in that district semi against them. I think they're going to give Helias everything in the world that they can handle. The only thing on the Helias side, the advantage is you get to play it in Jeff City at home, but Timberland's going to travel really well. AJ Rains for the Wolves has just been terrific all season long. Just a really, really good quarterback making great decisions, and we saw that this past Friday. I mean, they're going to be a team you have to watch out for. And boy, if they can knock off Helias, Hal takes care of their business. How about those two for a part 2 that have had some classics over the last 3 years in the state quarterfinal next week?
Be a great matchup, and we don't cover this, but real quick before we move on, so you mentioned Jackson taking the upset loss to rival Poplar Bluff, kind of coming out of nowhere with Bluff, and in Eureka obviously winning, and they're going to be setting up a matchup with MICDS. So we've got some interesting. I think the winner of that District 2 is going to be a handful, because Eureka, MICDS, those are two of the best teams in the state.
You've got Kevin Emanuel for Eureka, and then you look at the running game for MICDS, Stephen Hall and Winston Moore. Those two kids this past Friday or Saturday against Lafayette accounted for 470 yards rushing.
Unreal.
I mean, just amazing. I mean, what they did, Lafayette got an early lead in the third quarter, but then it just turned into the Winston Moore Stephen Hall show, and they just went off the charts and just did everything that you need to do. This matchup is going to be the fun one. I mean, two just big time rushing attacks, two big time offensive and defensive lines. I don't know if any of the 3 running backs are going to get more than 100 yards. If you get over 100 yards in this game, you're going to win. And that's going to be the bottom line. You're not going to see a lot of passing. You're not going to see a lot of fancy stuff. You are just going to see smash mouth, run it down your throat football. And that's what we're going to see in that district final. And it's just going to be so much fun. And then Jackson, that's the other trap game. They beat Poplar earlier in the season. Poplar Bluff had their number, was able to come away with the victory. So now we'll have a Boot Hill matchup for that district final between Cape Central, who knocked off Oakville, and then Poplar, wins the 1-point ball game. Sorry, guys. you're playing to get to the quarterfinal, but you're not going to make it any farther because Eureka and MICVS, I think the winner of that is going to make it to the state semifinal. Two high-level teams, two teams that have done things the right way all season long. You know, I think the top side of that bracket right now in five can make it all the way through.
It's such a good gosh, I mean, the more I look at it, I think you're right. Class 5 is the toughest class, and but we got to move on to Class 6 now and talk about these
Yeah.
guys so they get a little bit of love. So Class 6 District 1, we have a finals matchup set in the semis. Number 1 CBC defeated Kirkwood 41-3, and number 2 Marquette defeated number 3 Seckman 42-14 to set up a CBC Marquette final. We did talk about the possibility of how Kirkwood could play, how well they've been playing, but CBC is CBC, and the dream season for Seckman kind of comes to an end, but not before doing some great things as well with their program. So, Jim, what do we think about this district?
Yeah, this has been a great district. We knew it was going to be a good one. And CBC just came out, punched Kirkwood in the mouth early, and Kirkwood couldn't respond. And that's how CBC is. When they get into that mode, when they come out on hitting on all cylinders, they're awfully tough to stop. And Kirkwood just couldn't come up with an answer. Love had a terrific game, on the ground. They got McClellan involved, with some receptions. This CBC team is good, and you got to keep your eye out for them. But I'm telling you right now, this Marquette team with Jack Althart as their quarterback, he's got some great weapons out on the edge. But what they did defensively against Cole Rubel, they scored. Now, people got to remember, Seckman scored the first touchdown on the first drive of the game, and it was all Rubel. But then after that, Marquette dialed up a bunch of stuff that Seckman hasn't seen all year long, and was able to do some crazy things. And that's what great teams do. They make those adjustments on the fly. But what a great year for Seckman. What a great year for Cole Rubel. He's going to go down in history as one of the top running backs ever to come out of the metro area. And I don't care if he played for Seckman. I don't care who he played for. What he did, he deserves every ounce of credit that he's going to get. And it was really great to see. And, he's been in some big matchups. And the year that Seckman had, you can't take it away from him. What a great year for those kids. And I know they're losing a lot, but I just think the last 2 years have been program builders for the Jaguars. And they're going to be ready to go. They're going to get the kids out. They're going to get the kids excited. And they're going to keep trying to do everything that they did this year.
Yeah, and it's such a great story, as you said, about Rubel and what they've been able to accomplish, and kind of being it almost seems like sometimes the stepsister to Fox, and then all of a sudden their programs, they've done such a great job building it up, and their athletics are taking off, and they're doing some great things. And I'll tell you, I would have loved to have seen Coach Macklin maybe pull off the upset, but Kirkwood's just not there yet. But CBC's pretty good. So
yeah, but Kirkwood still got one more trophy to play for. They got Turkey Day here in a couple weeks, so they've got the Frisco Bell that they've held now for the last 7 years. I know they want to keep it for an 8th year. So Thanksgiving Day at noon, we'll all be sitting over at Webster Groves watching a little Thanksgiving Day football, and not professional style either. We'll be watching real good football.
Right. And our last district that we'll be highlighting is Class 6 District 2, where we have a final set between number 5 DeSmet and number 2 Rockbridge. Number 5 DeSmet upsetting number 1 Troy 32-17 in the semifinals, while Rockbridge, the number 2 seed, defeated number 6 Hazelwood Central 28-6. So, Jim, I talk about looking forward, and we knew DeSmet's pretty good based on their strength of schedule. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, and DeSmet has a ton to play for. If they win, they host next week. Bottom line, it doesn't matter. The only way they would not host is if Park Hill South beats Nixa. If Nixa wins and DeSmet wins, Nixa's got to come up here. And that's huge. That is, I mean, you don't have to travel 3 hours down south. You can have your own routine. You can do the things that you want to do. And that's big. It's more than a district title right now for the Spartans. Right now, they want to play to ensure that they are hosting next week, because I think Nixa is going to be Park Hill South. I watched Nixa on Friday night. in a game that started at 9:30 and finished up around midnight because of weather down in the Springfield area. And they're good. They're really, really talented. But, DeSmet did everything they needed to do. Their strength of schedule was terrific all year long. They played some of the toughest teams in the nation. And we knew that they were going to make a lot of noise here in the postseason. And guess what? They knock off the number 1 seed. They knock off the number 4 seed. Now they'll get a crack at the number 2 seed in Rockbridge. They're going to have to travel out to Columbia. Rockbridge is awfully tough to play out there. But I think the Smet team can get the job done. And boy, what an atmosphere that you will see at the Smet next Friday. It'll be a Saturday afternoon game next week with Nixa coming up, if Nixa can win their side of things.
Yeah, and you got to give DeSmet a lot of credit. I know that the voters for the rankings kind of knocked them out based on their record, but we said it. They're one of the best 3-3, 4-3, 4-4 teams in the state based on who they've played. And now they're going to play their 3rd straight road game for a chance to host.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then you look up top, I mean, CBC wins, they're going to have, if Liberty North holds court, they're going to have to go out to KC because both teams have hosted. Then it goes to the bottom part of the bracket this year. And, so I know CBC is pulling for Park Hill to get the W so that they won't have to make that trip, so that they can host. I mean, and once again, I mean, everybody's saying you should be worrying about what's in front of you this week. Well, yeah, but you also have to kind of look ahead because you want to know where you're going to go, especially in Class 6. You want to know where that semifinal is going to be. You want that semifinal at home, on your home turf, in front of your crowd. And you can control a lot of things as in routine and doing things that you do every day. And so those things, it's all important in the grand scheme of things, especially in Class 6 when you get to this point of the season.
Yeah, and it's going to be kind of curious to see how it plays out, and the fact that Class 6 has one less game you have to play in order to get there. I mean, good gosh, there's some good football going on, so should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of really interesting games here on out.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, it gets good from here on, moving forward. You got the district finals this week, and then for Class 6, you got the semifinal next week, and then the quarterfinals for everybody else. There's just great games all around the state, and my gosh, it's just going to be so much fun to follow, so much fun to watch, and I'm excited. I'm getting geared up for the Class 6 championship that I'll be announcing on Misha.tv, and the 8-man game, which I love calling the 8-man game, and then the Class 4 game. I mean, it's just, this is the time of year you get really excited.
I mean, I'm excited for these games and to see how they all pan out. I'm also excited because it's start of winter sports. So
basketball season has started. Right. Yes.
Already in practice. Well, Jim, you talk about having some great content out there that's free. Scoops with Danny Mac. What we got this week?
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's a lot of volleyball this week. Normally, I was sitting writing over the week on Saturday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just between cross country and volleyball, I've already got a story written. So I had to shift gears and do my football and soccer stuff on Tuesdays. So, we got a lot of great stuff from this past weekend, state championships. Tuesday, we got some football stuff in and some soccer stuff in because there's still a lot of great soccer going on. On Wednesday, what a great student athlete of the week in Kirsten Lloyd from Jefferson, and her story and chatting with her was phenomenal. And then on the podcast that came out earlier today, had Tara Fish on there and also Zach Young from Lafayette, 2 state champions from this past weekend. Then, tomorrow we'll have the big football preview, plus we'll have the soccer quarterfinal previews, and, just a lot of free content that we're cranking out every day on Scoops with Danny Mac.
And that's what it's all about, is giving these kids those accolades and spotlighting them for all their great accomplishments and hard work. So, Jim, I can't wait to talk about, our next round of games next week, man. It should be, as I always say, it should be a lot of fun.
It will be a lot of fun, brother. And this is the fun time of the year. And, Friday night, I'll be sitting in my office having 4 games up on the monitors and just, ready to rock and roll. So, yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. And, we'll have a lot of fun watching them, and then we'll have a lot more fun talking about them next week.
Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate you joining us, Jim, for another episode of On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview. Thank you guys for all tuning in. We will see you all next week. Tune in for new episodes of Coach's Box each week on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or the Streamline Sports app. And you can also listen to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview with Jim Powers is brought to you by Scoops with Danny Mack and Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.